this is Jordyn Cash, and my global cuisine research project is on Spanish cuisine. And the question that I pose for you is it just better? Here are the table of contents with the slide numbers on it, just explaining some of the things I'm going to be going over in the presentation. First, we have the introduction. Why did I choose Spanish cuisine? Spanish cuisine and its benefits became a topic that led not only to answers, but also to more questions and meaningful connections through my personal experience. I had a 14-day visit to Spain, and it strengthened my interest in this subject, and take a deeper look into its cuisine felt only right. This experience raised the important question of if Spanish cuisine is simply better for people in every way. Here's a picture of me and a couple of friends. I went for a study abroad trip with Montclair State for our dance program. And here on the right, there's an image of some food that I ate. And during the trip, learning how much pride Spain takes in its cuisine was so fascinating. At the same time, it resulted in questioning whether the United States has that same sense of pride in its own food, or whether it has earned that pride at all. Spanish food represents more than meals alone. Each dish reflects aspects of identity, history, labor, and shared values. Studying Spanish cuisine is not only about food itself, but also understanding a country's values. Next, we have the place in history. Here I have a map. It is of the Iberian Peninsula, as this is the cultivation and the cultural exchange that occurred across the Iberian Peninsula that shaped a lot of what Spanish food is. Spain contains Mediterranean and Atlantic coastlines, and it also has mountainous areas as well. This leads to the many different preparations of food, coastal and inland. In the ingredients, practices, and traditions of the country, there are so many influences from rural to urban places around the world that have shifted the cooking and eating that occurs in Spain. There is so much migration. In the back behind this paragraph here, I have birds flocking because that is literally what makes Spanish cuisine. There is Roman, Muslim, and even American influences that are just a few to name. And in Spain's food economy, there is an everyday reproduction of Spanish cuisine that is dependent on workforces that are migrant. There is a lot of international trade that happened during the Columbian exchange in the early years that allowed for a lot of food to be transferred in between the old and new world, like America and Europe. Spain has such an important focus on gastronomy. This is a topic that can take many hours to explain and take deeper into, because nothing more did I hear about except for gastronomy. All I did was hear about gastronomy when I was in Spain and how important it is and how many accolades that the country gets from it. It is the science of preparing and serving fine food. There are so many accolades, as I mentioned, like Michelin stars and international ranking lists, but this pride did not just evolve from anywhere. In Laura Anderson's Control and Resistance, Food Discourse in Franco Spain, it shows the dictatorship and the effect that Spain had under this leader, Francisco Franco. It vividly affected gastronomy, and it became politically important. Loyalty, unity, and sacrifice matched up for both the dictatorship and the concept of gastronomy in Spain. Nationalism became a way of disguise. It was a disguise to cover the disgusting inequality occurring underneath. There were poor households, women not even being close to having rights in the workforce, and huge differences in food between wealthy and local communities because of the dictatorship of Franco. For the third section, I have components of the cuisine. How is and was Spanish food made? There are communities, as I mentioned, on the coastline and in the inland. So the coast is heavily dependent on fish, shellfish, and seafood in general, while the inland focuses more on the grains, meat, and preserved products. Here are a bunch of researchers, Guerrero Lara, Jimenez Aquintuno, Pereira, and Rivera from 2019 research, where it mentions the Mediterranean-like diet that Spain has, which includes slow cooking and fresh and healthy ingredients. In the past, sustainable food systems like farming and coastal preparation have not been successful due to the lack of knowledge on how to process and understand traditional Spanish food. But with the initiatives that the researchers have found across Madrid and in Alicante as well, This is changing and a promotion of diversity, along with preserving cultural knowledge, because the more known, the more benefits in all aspects of the food in Spain. The problem was that people did not know about the history and the preservation and preparation that goes into Spanish cuisine. So a lot of the problems with the food systems being unsustainable was because they did not know. And the more knowledge that we have, the more benefits that come from it. There are influences from the Roman rule that happened in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, the Columbian Exchange as mentioned, and Iberian agriculture. Here are some main ingredients and preparation types in Spain. I have an image of the fish here and the shellfish here, and then grilling just as an example. But there's fish, shellfish, grains, meat, olive oil, wheat, saffron, wine, rice, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, roasting and toasting, stewing, grilling, and salting. Next is the transformation and globalization. Modern cultural narratives have been found to shape the authenticity of what Spanish cuisine is compared to timeless tradition deciding it. Now, Spanish cuisine is not a fixed tradition. It continues to evolve and change, but it does have those traditional concepts and foundations that a lot of people stick to when cooking. In Rebecca Ingram's women's work, How Culinary Cultures Shaped Modern Spain, there are debunks of the myths that occur in the modernity of Spanish culinary practices. As mentioned, there are constant changes in what it has been and how it has been reshaped, including international influences, movement in class, social class, and gender roles. We're debunking fact and myth in just an image right there. Next up, there is the Second Republic that occurred. Here is an image of the proclamation of the Second Republic and the Second Republic symbol. And it entered Spain with progress and citizens opposing the standards of inequality under dictatorship. Again, Francisco Franco's. This directly influenced Spanish cuisine as it affected the food-labor equality and gender roles in said labor. There was no equality between women and men in early Spain. And when the men began to fight back, as quoted in my paper, it is the new woman that they called it, they were applying for actual employment rather than remaining in where the men put them, which was the kitchen. So a lot of gender roles that went into this and how it even affects us today. And here we have a direct comparison with United States cuisine and Spanish cuisine. The U.S. does not show the complexity and duality of Spanish cuisine by even placing it in categories of Hispanic and Mediterranean cuisine. Again, there is a lot of Mediterranean influences, but in Spain, there is so much pride in being Spanish food without any other tagging along or any added distractions or anything. That is interesting how in the U.S. it is not shown the same. It is in a broad sense and not in its intended regional nationalist way. Adaptation and the differences between Spanish and American cuisine. There is cooking and eating practices in Spain that fit the local availability from ingredients to production, but in America, the practices fit more of a consumer expectations and trends that are definitely more prominent. So here's an image I have of American food with quotes around it because even American food is not from America a lot of the time, and the word pride overlapped over it because it makes us question, can the U.S. have pride in our cuisine at all? Here we have my acculturation experience, which is my cooking class. Here are some images from my cooking class. I went to Spain and was able to participate and partake in a cooking class where we made paella. And paella reveals how much Spanish eating has a culture that historically emphasizes shared plates, tapas, like appetizers and smaller meals is what that means, and an overall system that operates as a less business focus but communal social focus, deeply rooted in everyone's lives in Spain. That was something so prominent when I visited, was the community and how much people really cared for each other there and how much food brought them together as well. The food in Spain is just a glimpse into the country's priorities of community, tradition, flavors, and again, gastronomy. This is a dish that is so renowned and is proof that local recognition and national recognition can coexist in a cuisine. This was called Alicante Tasting Club in Alicante, Spain. Here on the left is me cooking some parts of the paella. And on the right is the paella finished product. And in the middle is our beautiful and wonderful helpers and guides through this tasting, Christina. And lastly, we have my reflection and conclusion. Is Spanish cuisine just better? The question that was posed from the beginning. There was so much evolution and transformation that occurred in Spanish cuisine, and it made it into what would display cultural and historical reshaping. The global systems are ever evolving, and they make what Spain's cuisine is. It shows how their production was built off the backs of labor, inequality, political control, and authenticity. The US and Spain both share the concept of fixed transitions not existing, even when internationally apart. So that was fun to learn and fun to connect after this project and after my visit. There is so much pride that Spain has in its food, and it is something that I initially did not believe the States had. However, after discovering the palate differences between what kids grow up and what kinds happen and what kind of food happens that we when we grow up in the opposing countries, the US has pride in its variety. There may not be many accolades for the gastronomical aspects of dining in America, but the cultural and historical connections that have built the food systems to be what they are can definitely be appreciated. Spanish cuisine is every single phase that it has been to every single phase that it will be and has been. Here are my resources here, my authors that I have quoted also in my paper, and the photos. Thank you so much.